A semi-automatic pistol is a type of pistol that is semi-automatic, meaning it uses the energy of the fired cartridge to cycle the action of the firearm and advance the next available cartridge into position for firing. One cartridge is fired each time the trigger of a semi-automatic pistol is pulled. The pistol's disconnector ensures this behavior. Additional terms sometimes used as synonyms for a semi-automatic pistol are automatic pistol, self-loading pistol, auto pistol, and auto-loading pistol. A semi-automatic pistol harnesses the energy of one shot to reload the chamber for the next. After a round is fired, the spent casing is ejected and a new round from the magazine is loaded into the chamber, allowing another shot to be fired as soon as the trigger is pulled again. Most pistols use recoil operation to do this, but some pistols use blowback or gas operation. Most types of semi-automatic pistols rely on a removable magazine to store ammunition before it is fired, usually inserted inside the grip. Operation. Typically, the first round is manually loaded into the chamber by pulling back and releasing the slide mechanism. This is called racking the slide or racking the gun. After the trigger is pulled and the round is fired, the recoil operation of the handgun automatically extracts and ejects the shell casing and reloads the chamber. This mode of operation generally allows for faster reloading and storing a larger number of cartridges than a revolver. Some modern semi-automatic pistols are double action only, DA or DAO, that is, once a round is chambered, each trigger pull cocks the hammer, striker, or firing pin, and additionally releases the same to fire a cartridge in one continuous motion. Each pull of the trigger on a DAO semi-automatic pistol requires the same amount of pressure. The Kel-Tec P32 is an example of a DAO action. DAO semi-automatic pistols are most generally recommended only in the smaller, self-defense, concealable pistols, rather than in target or hunting pistols. A notable exception is Glock brand pistols which optimize preset triggers, similar to DAO, but the striker is partially cocked back as the slide closes. This allows for significantly shorter trigger pulls than DAO. The trigger spring can be replaced with a lighter one and paired with a low-strength sear connector, resulting in lightened trigger pulls to improve a shooter's accuracy, like models G34 and G35. Standard modern semi-automatic pistols are usually double-action, DA, also sometimes known as double-action/single action, DA/SA. In this design, the hammer or striker may be either thumb-cocked or activated by pulling the trigger when firing the first shot. The hammer or striker is recocked automatically during each firing cycle. In double-action pistols, the first pull of the trigger requires roughly twice as much pressure as subsequent firings, since the first pull of the trigger also cocks the hammer, if not already cocked by hand. The Beretta 92F/FS, a full-sized, service, semi-automatic pistol is an example of this style of action. A common mode of carry for DA semi-automatic pistols is with the magazine full, a round chambered, and the gun holstered and uncocked with the external safety unengaged or off. The Taurus PT-145 is an example of a DA/SA weapon, as it has no decocker and thus has its striker primed from the moment of chambering and only enters double action mode if a round fails to fire upon the pin's impact. At other times, it operates as a single action striker fired firearm. In contrast, a single action, SA, semi-automatic pistol must be cocked by first operating the slide or bolt, or, if a round is already chambered, by cocking the hammer manually. The famed Colt M1911 is an example of this style of action. All SA semi-automatic pistols exhibit this feature, and automatically cock the hammer when the slide is first racked to chamber a round. A round can also be manually inserted in the chamber with the slide locked back. Then the safety can be applied. Cocking modes. The normal mode of carrying an SA semi-automatic pistol is Condition 1, popularly known as cocked and locked. Condition 1, a term popularized by Colonel Jeff Cooper, refers to having the magazine full, a round chambered, the hammer fully cocked, and the thumb safety engaged or on, at least for right-handed users. For many single-action, semi-automatic pistols, this procedure works well only for right-handed users, as the thumb safety is located on the left side of pistol and is easily accessible only for those who are holding the pistol in the right hand. Many SA semi-automatic pistols have a hammer position known as half-cocked. Squeezing the trigger will not fire the gun when it is in the half-cocked position, and neither will dropping the gun in this state cause an accidental discharge. During World War II in the Pacific Theater, an unofficial and unapproved carry mode for the SA-M1911 by left-handed U.S. soldiers in combat was carrying the gun with the magazine full, a round chambered, the action in half-cocked position, and the thumb safety, accessible only to right-handed users, positioned in the off, or ready to fire, mode. The primary advantage of the half-cocked position versus the uncocked position in that particular scenario was added sound suppression, of the click of the weapon being cocked. A secondary advantage was the avoidance of accidental discharges if the gun were accidentally dropped. The half-cock was revised by Colt in the 1970s and subsequently other manufacturers. The hammer will fall from half-cock if the trigger is pulled on most newer 1911 type guns. In general, single-action, semi-automatic pistols should never be carried cocked with the safety off, although many newer SA pistols have modified actions which allow the hammer to exert pressure against the firing pin only when the trigger is pulled. Many modern SA semi-automatic pistols have had their safety mechanisms redesigned to provide a thumb safety on both sides of the pistol, ambidextrous, thereby better meeting the needs of left-handed, as well as right-handed users. Semi-automatic pistols with different traits have been designed, including those with a magazine fed with a stripper clip, and those with non-removable magazines. These designs are rarely used in modern semi-automatic pistols. The model C96, or broom handle Mauser, in its original configuration, has a fixed, non-removable magazine located in front of the trigger, which is loaded directly through the breech from the top of the pistol. Semi-automatic pistols use one firing chamber that remains fixed in a constant linear position relative to the gun barrel. In contrast, although double-action revolvers can also be fired semi-automatically, their rounds are not fired from a single chamber, but rather are fired from each of the chambers that are rotated into linear alignment with the barrel's position in turn just prior for each shot fired. Terminology. The language surrounding automatic, semi-automatic, self-loading, etc., often causes confusion due to differences in technical usage between different countries and differences in popular usage. For example, the term automatic pistol technically refers to a machine pistol which is capable of firing multiple round bursts for a single pull of the trigger, although in popular US usage it is also used as a synonym for a semi-automatic pistol. In the case of pistols, an automatic pistol, a semi-automatic pistol, or a self-loading pistol, all usually imply a handgun that is semi-automatic, self-loading, and magazine-fed with a magazine that is removable, producing one shot fired for each trigger pull. The term pistol may refer to handguns in general, or may be used to differentiate semi-automatic pistols from revolvers. Technology. A self-loading pistol reloads the chamber with a new round automatically each time the weapon is fired, without additional action being required by the user. For a semi-automatic pistol, this is typically accomplished by recoil operation. In a machine pistol, in contrast, this can be accomplished by blowback, or, less commonly, by gas operation, harnessing gases produced when the gun is fired. The Desert Eagle is a rare example of a semi-automatic pistol that siphons off some of the gases instead of relying on short recoil operation. A revolver, which uses multiple chambers and a single barrel, and a derringer, which uses multiple chambers and multiple barrels, also fire one round per trigger pull, but achieve this in different ways and as such are not classified as being semi-automatic. A semi-automatic pistol will fire only one shot per trigger pull, in contrast to a fully automatic or machine pistol, which continues to fire as long as the trigger is held or until all rounds have been fired. The Mauser M712 Schnellfeuer, German for rapid fire, a modified Mauser C96 pistol, is a notable example of a true machine pistol. While both types of weapons operate on the same principles, fully automatic weapons must be built more ruggedly to accommodate the heat and stress caused by rapid firing, and it can be difficult, and illegal in most countries, to convert a semi-automatic pistol into a fully automatic mode of fire. A selective fire action pistol, though, can be converted back and forth by means of a switch, and often includes a burst mode, typically for a 3-round burst with each trigger pull. Selective fire weapons are generally used by specialized law enforcement and security personnel such as SWAT teams, hostage rescue teams, anti-terrorist units, or government bodyguards for heads of state. In the United States, selective fire weapons are not available to civilians unless they live in a state that allows civilian ownership of National Firearms Act or Title II weapons. Actions: blowback versus locked breech. Self-loading automatic pistols can be divided into blowback and locked breech categories according to their principle of operation. The blowback operating principle is suitable for smaller, lower-powered calibers, such as .32 ACP and .380 ACP, as the resistance of the recoil spring and mass of the slide are sufficient to retard the opening of the breech until the projectile has left the barrel, and breech pressure has dropped to a safe level. For more powerful calibers such as the 9mm Parabellum, 9mm, and .45 ACP, some form of locked breech is needed to retard breech opening, as an unlocked blowback pistol in these calibers requires a very heavy slide and stiff spring, making them bulky, heavy, and difficult to operate. A somewhat commercially successful blowback pistol design in the more powerful calibers was produced, the Spanish Astra 409mm Largo and the similar Astra 609mm Parabellum. U.S. manufacturer Hi-Point also produces a line of blowback-operated pistols in several calibers, including 9mm and .45 ACP. Virtually all other service caliber pistols are locked breech designs. History. After Hiram Maxim introduced his recoil-powered machine gun in 1883, several gunsmiths set out to apply the same principles to handguns, including Maxim. Maxim's designs for smaller firearms using his recoil-powered ideas never went into production. In the 1880s, other designers worked on self-loading designs. The Schonberger Laumann 1892 was the first semi-automatic pistol. The first model to gain any commercial success was the Hugo Borchardt designed C93, designed in 1893 and made its public debut in 1894. Borchardt invented the C93 mechanism, based in large part upon Maxim's toggle lock principle. The C93 featured a clever locking mechanism, modeled after the human knee joint, in which the mechanical joint is called a knee, or in German Kniegelenk, knee joint. The C93 proved mechanically reliable, but was too large and bulky to receive widespread acceptance. Equipped with a screw-on wooden stock, the C93 served well in small pistol carbines. Borchardt also developed the 7.65mm Borchardt cartridge, around which the C93 was built. In 1896, Paul Mauser introduced his first model of the famous Mauser broom-handle semi-automatic pistol, the C96. It was also the first mass-produced and commercially successful pistol to have a large capacity, staggered column magazine holding 10 or 20 rounds. Using a more powerful and nearly identical version of the 7.63mm bottle-necked cartridge of the Borchardt C93 pistol, the Mauser was one of the first self-loading pistols used extensively in battle, notably the South African War of 1899–1902. These pistols were made in 7.63mm Mauser, or 9x25mm Mauser, along with some models eventually being made in 9mm Parabellum and a small number in .45 ACP for China. In 1898, the Schwarzlos Model 1898 was a semi-automatic pistol invented by Prussian firearm designer Andreas Wilhelm Schwarzlos. It was chambered for the 7.65x25mm Mauser. It could also shoot the less powerful Borchardt ammunition. The Schwarzlos design was most advanced and far ahead of its time, but not widely adopted, with less than 1,000 pieces being manufactured. Small lots were sold to the Boers and used during the Boer War. Another lot was sold to members of the Russian Social Democratic Party who were plotting insurrection, but were confiscated at the Russian border and issued to the Imperial Russian Frontier Guards. In Belgium in 1896, the first American gun designer to develop self-loading semi-automatic pistols was John Browning, whose models were first manufactured by the Belgian firm of Fabrique Nationale, FN, in Europe and later by Colt in the US. Like Luger's work conducted around the same time in Germany, Browning's first successful design was in 7.65 mm, the Browning M1900. Browning also devised a slightly different 7.65 mm Browning .32 auto cartridge for his semi-automatic pistol that differed from Luger's 7.65 mm Parabellum. Browning also designed .25, .38, .380, and .45 ACP cartridges in addition to .32 ACP for his semi-automatic pistol designs. Browning also created the locked breech action now commonly used by nearly all heavy-caliber semi-automatic pistols, and designed the .45 ACP Colt M1911, adopted by the U.S. military as its service pistol in 1911. The Model 1911 is still in active use with some U.S. Special Forces and Marine Corps units. Browning also co-designed the FN Browning High Power, announced in 1922, during the last years of his life, working on this design until his death in 1926. It was a 9 mm Luger semi-automatic pistol capable of holding 13 rounds, plus one chambered, in the magazine. The Savage 1907 pistol 32 ACP featured a 10-round magazine which is of staggered column design, and predates the Browning patent filing, for the large capacity 9 mm pistol by some 18 years as the Savage was patented in 1905. Whether the staggered magazine featured in the Savage 1905 was a focal point of the patent is unclear. In a review of the Browning patent dated February 22, 1927, it is equally unclear as to the staggered magazine being either a primary or a dependent claim of the patent as issued. However, the existence of a staggered magazine in 1905 is indisputable, as many of these Savage pistols were produced and survive to this day. Browning could well have come into contact with this concept during the military trials of 1911, as a version of the Savage design in .45 calories was also under consideration alongside the Browning/Colt design. The earlier, single-column magazine design is still used today, however, especially for deep concealment semi-automatic pistols such as the Kel-Tec P32. The next notable design was the 7.65 mm Luger by George Luger, which although successful in its function, nonetheless failed to have adequate stopping power and failed to win widespread acceptance. In 1902, Luger's subsequent and similar P08 and 9 mm Parabellum overcame the problem of inadequate stopping power and featured a greatly improved Borchardt-type knee joint, locking mechanism. Unlike Browning's locked breech design, the barrel in a knee-link design does not tip up and down while the gun is fired, thereby theoretically improving shooting accuracy. Luger's P.08 was adopted by the German military and served as their standard sidearm in World War I. During World War II, Germany was the first nation to adopt a double-action pistol, the Walter P38, which could be carried loaded, with a cartridge chambered, and ready to fire without the risk of an accidental discharge if dropped. The P38 also used Luger's 9 mm Parabellum cartridge. During World War II, revolvers were still issued by various major powers, but their use was decreasing. Though the British firm Webley and Scott had developed several adequate self-loading pistols, one of which was adopted by the, normally unarmed, British police in 1911 and by the Royal Navy and Royal Marines before the First World War, revolvers were generally preferred by most British military. In the Soviet Union, the TT pistol replaced the Nagant M1895 revolver during the war. In the United States, the M1911A1 was adopted as the standard military sidearm. Both Colt and Smith & Wesson produced revolvers chambered for the same .45 ACP ammunition used in the M1911A1, because of the great demand for handguns and the need to adopt a common cartridge for use in both semi-automatic pistols and revolvers. After World War II, most nations eventually adopted 9 mm Parabellum caliber pistols employing Browning's locked breech design for their standard issue military pistols. The most popular early choice was the FN Browning High Power, which was the first high-capacity pistol, Another popular model was the locked breech Walther P38 because of its many safety features. As of 2011, the U.S. military sidearm is a variant of the Beretta 92F/FS. In 1971, Smith & Wesson offered a safe double-action, high-capacity pistol, the Model 59. CZ launched its CZ75 in 1975. Beretta introduced the Beretta 92 also in 1975. Glock introduced the groundbreaking Glock 17 in 1982, and Sig Sauer introduced its Model P226 in 1983. Walther introduced their high-capacity P88 in 1988. In the early 1990s, Heckler & Koch combined what they considered to be the most desirable attributes of semi-autos in the HK-USP pistol. In 1995, Kel-Tec introduced their first compact 9mm pistol, the Kel-Tec P11, designed for concealed carry. In 1999, Kel-Tec introduced their .32 ACP P32 for concealed carry. After the Second World War, the almost universal trend has been for semi-automatic pistols to replace revolvers for military use, although the transition has been slower in police and civilian use. As of 2011, revolvers are mainly used in jurisdictions which permit their use for civilian self-defense, hunting, plinking, and target practice. Semi-automatic pistols are by far the most popular for concealed carry by civilians, primary handguns for police and military use, backup guns for police use, and where the usual 5 or 6 shots of a revolver are deemed inadequate.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.